You can work your whole life at a job, but when you retire, the only thing you may get from your boss is a hug and gonorrhea. In the Edo period, there was a type of prostitute that single-handedly saved Japan's highway system, and all they got for it was suffering. Japan had 5 major highways, roads used by merchants, lords, Buddhist monks, government officials, Pokemon trainers, very important persons, those with interesting stories, and even more interesting, coin pouches. The people who were most interested in these coin pouches were those who ran official post stations that lay along these roads. For example, the Tokaido had 53 post stations, like pit stops on the highway, except instead of gas stations and depression, each stop had inns and depression. They were made to serve officials on government business, but eventually they catered to all types of travelers. By law, if a government officer visited, stations had to give them the VIP treatment. Horses, a room, workers to carry their stuff, and a bunch of other services. Over time, as more and more shogunate officials walked these roads, post stations gained a lot more business, and the business owners at these places hated it. It was painful for innkeepers to look around, watching their communities grow, then go home and realize that the only things not growing were their bank accounts, because they had to provide expensive services to these lazy, unprepared-ass officials. No one likes self-important people from the government, and people like giving them horses even less. Post stations struggled with their finances and struggled with their dwindling horse supply. News of their problems entered the ears of those in charge in the capital and opened their eyes to the problem. If these stations died, it would have been shitty for everyone. The highway system would collapse, less places to stay, to eat, to battle gym leaders, and traveling would have been way more dangerous because stations also guarded the roads. The shogunate declared new laws to help post-station businesses. One of the new reforms was about prostitution, and it changed everything. Previously, prostitution was banned at post stations, but in 1718, they said, okay, you can have just 2 serving girls at each inn, just 2. And all of a sudden, people started to get really philosophical about what the number 2 actually meant. They were called meshimori onna, or food-serving girl. But you know how In-N-Out has a secret menu? Well, these inns also had a secret menu, and they were just as delicious. I'd imagine on the menu were things like Tokyo Treat and Sakura Co., the sponsor for this video. What's wrong, honey? Babe, there are some things that I need to tell you, but I've been scared. You know you can tell me anything. Okay. My, thing is bent. Like it's bent to the left. Oh, is that it? That's totally fine. Bent feels better. There's also another thing. I can't get it up. It's been that way for years. And it's the real reason I said I wanted to wait until marriage. Oh, it's okay, babe. We can work on it. I'll support you. Oh, okay. Well, there is one more thing. It's really small, like of the micro variety. Oh, I'm fine with that too. There's still things we can do with something micro. It's okay. I'll support you always. Really? Oh, God, I was so worried you wouldn't believe. I told my mom and she said she knows you and it'll be fine, but I never believed her. I just kept worrying and worrying. Wait, you told your mom? Yeah. Why? This is really private. What, do you tell your mom everything? Are you a mama's boy? What? I hate mama's boys. I can't believe you would keep something like this from me. Until now? Are you serious? You're sick. I can't do this. I gotta go. I'm gonna tell my daddy all about this. Well, at least I have this box of Tokyo Treat. It'll never betray me. Tokyo Treat is a snack box service. It sends you a box of sweet and savory snacks directly from Japan. The theme for this month is Sakura Night Festival, with treats that make you feel like you are snacking under a cherry blossom tree in the evening. There are some cherry blossom themed snacks and even this delicious matcha latte Kit Kat. I just can't get enough of matcha. There's also Sakura Co., which comes with more premium snacks. This month's theme is Sakura Moonlight Festival. You get a lot of cherry blossom treats like cherry blossom mochi and cherry blossom cream cookies that pair really well with the ume pink tea. And for this month only, you get this cute cherry blossom glass to drink that tea in. Click the link in the description and choose code Linfamy to get a discount on your first box now. Give it to someone as a gift. Post-station managers dove headfirst into this widespread new business opportunity, and pretty soon inns started looking more like brothels, and post stations started looking more like pleasure districts. Guidebooks reviewed post stations with the most attractive working girls, and the number of visitors skyrocketed, like Shahed drones exploding all over post stations and their inns. The stations taxed the money generated from prostitution, and it could account for as much as 10% of a station's budget. But the most important thing was it brought in a ton of customers and grew the economies of these communities. Money talks, and it was saying more prostitutes. One station boss said, "There are stations that have these women and those that do not. Those with women prosper, while those without decline." Everyone was happy, except for one group of people. They say you can tell a lot about a culture by the number of different words they have for a thing. Like the Inuit have 50 words for snow, and the Chinese have 50 insults for the Taiwanese. Just kidding, I'm being unfair. The Inuit do not have 50 words for snow. That's a myth. The Japanese had a lot of words for prostitute. One of them is this. People called unlicensed prostitutes extra women or surplus women. The term actually worked in many contexts. Certain places were magnets for men. For example, mining towns and port cities saw a lot of male workers come and go. So you might think the population in these places skewed testosterone. But typically, women outnumbered men in these areas. Why? Well, when demand shows up with a coin pouch, supply tends to find them. Prostitutes were the extra women. Also, poor families had to survive by selling their extra daughters to brothels. And although inns were allowed only 2 serving women each, they treated that rule the way little bitches treat the rule to only take 1 Halloween candy. These unlicensed serving women were the extra. We have a good idea of what these women were like from the writings of visitors, even foreign visitors.
I can't wait to see the cherry blossoms. Good heavens!
Serving women were aggressive, totally different from those famous courtesans in cities who acted like they were unreachable. In many places, serving girls reached out for you. They lined up next to the road and dragged potential customers into their inns, willing or unwilling. People often warned travelers about places with pushy serving girls. It got so bad that there were even guidebooks advising you of the most aggressive stations you should avoid, helpfully allowing decent travelers to ignore that advice. Okay, there were certain types of people who wanted to avoid these places. For example, Buddhist monks were absolutely not one of these people. One German visitor wrote that at inns and tea shops on the road, he saw prostitutes come out around noon and sit on their verandas. They filled both sides of the road and called out to travelers, their sweet cries competing with each other like the calls of lovely birds being chased by a cat. One guide about famous places along the Tokaido wrote down the beautiful call of one woman. Stop here! The rooms are clean, not like at other inns. Come on, sir on the horse, get off here. There aren't any more good inns after this one. Come on. Very tempting. It's not a real morning until you hear the birds go, come on. Seeing so many prostitutes, it was pretty obvious to anyone that they weren't all registered legal prostitutes, 2 per inn. Even when it was illegal, girls were already working under the table. After the law allowed for prostitution, people were even more brazen. Government officials must have known the records of these inns were false, but they looked the other way, in the direction of that attractive serving girl. The really popular places cosplayed as the big pleasure quarters in the cities. These country courtesans even sat behind lattice screens, like they were behind a paywall. But beneath all the glamour and noise lay something darker. Where did these girls come from? Well, there were these people we'll call recruiters. These were not the type that came to your school acting super interested in your career goals. These were men who made their living going around poor parts of the country looking for families willing to enter their daughters into brothel contracts. So they were not as bad. The contracts were pretty much the same as the ones given to courtesans in the famous pleasure quarters of cities. They had to be signed by a guardian, usually a parent, and lasted up to 10 years. Imagine being a 9-year-old girl. 10 years is an eternity. Girls who were signed away lived in families that were desperately trying to make ends meet by selling one of the ends. It was a choice between sacrificing a daughter and the survival of the household. The daughter's sacrifice was often called honorable and moral, someone carrying out her duty. Sometimes a serving girl could be recruited nearby. Maybe she was living in a village next to the post station. This was a much better arrangement because she got to live close to family, she could visit often, and she could receive support from her family. But most of the time, a serving girl had to travel far away, pretty much leaving her old life behind at a young age. When a girl first stepped into her inn, she might have been impressed, depending on how poor she was. She received food, a decent place to live, and nice clothing. But if you think your working conditions are bad, take your issues at work and multiply them by 10 fat, naked men. That's 10 fat, naked men with issues. A serving girl under 15 or so was usually thought to be too young for sex work, but she was just the right age for child labor. She did maid work and tasks around the inn. Once she got old enough, she received the worst promotion ever and had to see customers every day. Some were ugly, some were dirty. She wasn't allowed to refuse them. She was stuck between a fuck and a hard place. Ugly, dirty, or abusive men, they all paid the same coin, although the innkeeper probably didn't want people damaging their product. They wanted to do it themselves, which they did. There was a lot of physical abuse. A serving woman could have a lover, as long as he paid. She could have 2 or 3 paying lovers for all her employers cared, but seeing a guy for free? Absolutely not. Besides special services, these women also had to do stuff around the inn, like housework and manual labor. It was hard to find a moment's rest. They really got the short end of the stick, which was probably infected. STDs were rampant, leading to many women dying and being buried in unceremonious graveyards. In former post-station towns today, we can still dig up these graveyards. Serving women could renew their contracts, but this was a profession with a time limit. Older women did other things like working in the fields, or those who were too weak looked after children. All in all, extra women saved the country's highway system and brought prosperity to these post stations, but they got to enjoy very little of it. Now, there were ways to escape this life, mainly through marriage. For example, in the Kanto region, men outnumbered women, sometimes by as much as 20%. So women who survived their contracts could easily find a husband and didn't need to return home to poverty. Prostitution didn't seem to have much of a stigma as far as marriage went. It seemed retired prostitutes got so many marriage proposals that historians believe they must have each murdered a healthcare CEO. For example, in 1803, officials broke into an inn and found 51 extra women, showing us what innkeepers thought of the 2 women per inn rule. When they freed these women from their contracts, 45 of them got married, mostly to men in nearby villages. The authorities even played matchmaker sometimes. When the government found illegal serving girls, the policy was to send them to places with too many men or places that needed farmers, treating them like seeds that would sprout into families someday. Some village heads even helped buy serving girls from post stations so they could marry local villagers. But more often, villagers bought out the contracts of women they wanted to marry. If your hubby could afford to buy out your contract, you were probably marrying into a better financial situation. The only people this didn't help were local, unmarried women in the villages, because their mothers never let them hear the end of it.
Even serving girls can get married. Why can't you?
This didn't necessarily mean that serving women got to choose their husbands. If some guy wanted to buy you out, you would probably jump at the chance to escape. Now, as a serving woman, it wasn't wise to depend on that regular customer to buy out your contract one day. After all, the money that he would have used to buy you out was being used to see you regularly. Also, it was rare, but some serving women even became concubines. You don't often hear of commoners having concubines, but commoners could be pretty rich and have enough resources for a wife and a concubine, though it's not clear if they had the resources to buy enough aspirin. This was the life of women in post-station brothels. But what about those lavish brothels in city pleasure quarters like in Yoshiwara? Girls as young as 5 entered those brothels, and life was not that bad for them at first, until they got to 13 or 14 and their masters sold their virginity. Click here to learn about them. We have a new Shogun YouTube member today, Zaralino. You pick me up like a cappuccino. We also have some new regular members, Eric X. Wolfman, Nurash, and Serial Sitter. That's either something dirty or something very relatable. Alright, I love you and spread the knowledge.